Episode 83, The Haymarket and Learning to Negotiate. When I was a boy, one of my favorite things to do was to tag along with Dad into downtown Boston on his Haymarket Square shopping trips. Mother and Dad lived on a tight budget, having 7 children, one income, and big ideas for their children's futures. Bargain hunting was a way of life for us. One of our bargain destinations, the huge Haymarket in Quincy Market, has devolved, unfortunately, into a make-believe tourist destination. Before such a development, it was a great, unique, low-price shopping area for Boston's many ethnic families. Haymarket Square was the oldest open-air market in the country, and Quincy Market was a series of 18th century industrial buildings offering many wholesale and some retail meat, cheese, fish, pickles, and other food businesses. I worked in one of those buildings not many years ago as a driver salesman, selling sausages and other meat products to supermarkets. Historic Faneuil Hall, the American Revolution's meeting place, stands out amongst those ancient industrial buildings. Dad regularly went to the market, as he called it, stocking up on large quantities of meat, fish, fresh vegetables, baked goods, fruit, and sometimes cheese. He would usually take one of his kids on his Saturday morning trip to help carry the many shopping bags full of bounty. We would take the bus from home to Central Square, Cambridge. That was our family's historical spot. Dad's father, my grandfather, Patrick Joseph Murphy, born in Boharach, Buttevant, Cork, Ireland, was the manager starter for the horse-drawn trolley cars in the late 19th century and the electric trolleys in the early 20th. His station was at the confluence of River Street, Western Ave, Magazine Street, and Mass Ave, exactly where we would get off the bus. We would then go down into the bowels of Central Square Station subway, onto what is now called the Red Line, and get off at Washington Street Station, now called Downtown Crossing. We would then go down an escalator even deeper into the lower intestine of Boston and take another subway line, one stop, to Haymarket Square Station. We would finally come up the long subway stairs into the daylight, right in the middle of the wonder and chaos of that famous open-air market. Every Friday and Saturday, all day, and right on the street, hundreds of hawkers, peddlers, and aggressive street vendors operated from stalls, stores, canopy tents, push carts, fixed wooden stands, and other imaginative mobile business vehicles. They were all hollering at the same time, trying to be heard over the din and the jarring voices of the others. They called out, "Peck of potatoes, 2 bits." 2 bits is 25 cents, and a peck is 15 pounds. Green beans, 3 for a quarter. Carnation, 6 bits, 2 dozen. Grass, 5 cents a pound. Grass is short for asparagus. Tomatoes, 8 for a quarter, and on and on. We would walk past vendors of watermelons, spuds, carrots, peas, and beans of all shapes and varieties. There were also baked goods stalls, stores with dry foods like flour, pasta, beans, spices, etc. Candy vendors, take-out cooked foods like hot dogs and boiled blue crab. The smells, the noises, the colors, and the people, all full of life, was startling. Dad always negotiated. Never did he pay the list price. He always counter-offered a lower price or added another item of produce to the original vendor's first price. Dad always found fault with the fruit or vegetables to get the price lower. For instance, he would say to the cabbage vendor, "Your cabbage is old and getting brown." The vendors expected and liked the haggling as much as Dad did. What an education for a youngster. The meat buying was a completely different and higher stratum of negotiations. It was the Super Bowl of haggling, chiseling, and play acting. If Dad won, he walked away with a large quantity of very good meat at exceptionally low prices. If the meat hawker won, he took my father's hard-earned money while getting rid of some soon-to-go-bad or tough-as-jerky meat. The meat sellers were located separately, a short distance away from the vegetable and fruit area. The stores were long, narrow shotgun style with walk-in freezers at the back, loaded to the ceiling with hook-hung sides of beef, lamb legs, and pork carcasses. Also visible were many butchers noisily cutting up chickens or sides of beef, grinding hamburger, and making sausages. These shops were not for the faint of heart. There were prominently displayed cows' heads and whole slaughtered pigs or lambs. These stores were lined up, each next door to the next, with metal overhead garage doors that were open to the sidewalks. The butcher salesmen were out onto the sidewalk, literally grabbing passers-by, dragging them into the store with their snappy patter going all the time. Dad got to know some of those guys, but was very distrustful. Among other bad deals, he had been once burned with a bad turkey which began to smell bad as it was roasting on Thanksgiving Day, too late to wring the vendor's neck. Dad loved the game, though. He would let the hawkers pull him in to show him some steaks or lamb chops. What he really wanted was an H-bone. Dad was like a Maryknoll missionary for beef H-bones. He would go on and on to anyone who would listen about the delicious H-bone and how he discovered that the mystery of life is called H-bone at a low price. The H-bone refers to the cut of meat in the hindquarters of beef above a certain bone. It includes very tasty cuts like short cuts of the rump roast, and London broil. The quality of meat, especially beef, is designated by its inspected and ink-stamped category: prime, choice, good, or commercial. Prime beef is heavily marbled with fat, is tender, and tastes the best. Choice is the next best. Good is what most people eat. It is leaner and less tender and less flavorful, but still tasty. Commercial is what is used for sausage making, hamburger, soup, and canning. It is very lean, tough, and the least tasty. Dad would always look for prime, but would usually end up with choice. So Dad would listen to the loud entreaties of us street vendors and show little interest and then act as if he were going to leave. The peddler would then show him another good deal. Dad would wait for the vendor to feel that he lost his mark. Then Dad would, without real interest, ask about an H-bone. The guy would jump at it and drag him over to show him such a piece of beef. Dad would check it thoroughly and say the price was much too high. Dad would again begin to leave, and the peddler would drop the price somewhat. Dad would then say something like, "Look, I'm going next door. Harry usually had very good prices, and his H-bones are great. The most I would pay is X dollars." The guy would moan and groan and make another offer of just about X dollars, and the deal would be done. It all reminds me of a joke about two Jewish merchants meeting at a Brooklyn temple after shul on Friday night. Nate says to Sid, "I've been wondering why God made Gentiles. Do you know?" Sid answers, "Well, somebody's got to pay retail. Neither my father nor I ever paid retail. If there was any other possibility, then we would do it." There were utilitarian as well as paternal reasons for Dad's bringing one of us with him. Usually there would be at least 2 shopping bags full of produce and 2 of meat to carry after walking the whole area. You had to be strong enough to carry 2 heavy shopping bags in order to enjoy this outing with the old man. After we filled the bags, we would get a treat. We would go to what Dad called the pie factory. It was located in a narrow alley just behind the fruit and vegetable stalls and right next door to the Union Oyster House, still the oldest and most famous seafood restaurant in Boston. It was a wholesale bakery in a big old brick industrial building. The retail space was in front of a big production bake area. There was a bakery sign in the big window with goodies displayed. We would visit this store last. Much of what was sold was second-day baked goods, bread and cakes, that had not been sold to its wholesale customers the previous day. They also had on display many kinds of freshly baked pies that were usually still warm. We bought the day-old lemon meringue pies. They must have been inexpensive or we would not have bought them. The one I remember the best was a small custard pie that I could eat while walking back to the subway. They were good. All in all, it was a great learning experience for a budding businessman like me. This is Rod Murphy. Thank you for viewing or listening to my podcast episodes. I really appreciate it. If you liked it, and if you so choose, I ask you to send a good review and or refer a friend who might be interested in this old Boston podcast series. Again, my thanks.